Welcome to the Student Success Centre seminar, Study Smarter. In a 2008 survey of more than 160,000 undergraduate students enrolled in the University of California system, students were asked to list what interferes the most with their academic success. Some blame family responsibilities, some blame jobs. The second most common obstacle to success, according to the students, was that they were depressed, stressed, or upset. And then came the number one reason, agreed upon by 33% of students. They said that they struggled with one particular problem frequently or all the time. They simply did not know how to study. Today we will teach you study tactics that are used by the most successful students. We have several learning objectives today. First, we will cover time management. Next, we will cover information organization, then mastering the content, then some additional tips and tricks that will make your studying go better, as well as some common pitfalls. The next area we need to address is time management. Many students get caught up in cramming. Cramming is exactly what you think it is, trying to cram as much information as possible into a short window of time. Unfortunately, that window is usually between midnight and 3 a.m. Does cramming work? A study was done on a group of students who studied Spanish for 3 years. The study compared those who spaced out their study time versus those who crammed at the last minute. 40 years later, the spacers retained 72% of the vocabulary they learnt. The crammers only retained 10%. Sure, cramming might get you through the short run, but $20,000 is a lot of money to spend to write a bunch of exams, only to forget it all. When your employer asks you about your degree, you want to be able to have a conversation about what you learnt. To prevent cramming situations, you must do some pre-planning. Imagine that you are halfway through the semester. In the middle of a busy week, a friend asks you, "Hey, what do you have coming up next week?" Even though you wrote down all of your due dates, chances are that you can't remember all the things that you have coming up on the horizon. After all, a university student life is a busy one. Even functioning day-to-day can be a challenge sometimes. Writing down due dates is drilled into us from an early age. However, nobody talks about the technique of reverse engineering. For this technique, you need to use sheets of paper or an agenda that has a monthly view, like the one you see in this slide. As soon as you know the date for a paper or exam, mark it down in your calendar. We are all good at doing this. Next is the most important part. Draw a line backwards in time. By doing this, you are acknowledging not just the due date, but the study time that is required for that important day. For example, this student has a history exam on the 15th. She has decided to allow 5 days of studying for this exam. Reverse engineering is an important technique that should be done at the beginning of each month to keep you on track and aware of what you have going on. Once a month you should sit down and do this technique. You will begin to understand when the crunch times are in your schedule. This is very helpful for managing your time outside of school as well. Most students write down due dates, but many of those students struggle with managing the heavy volume of schoolwork when due dates coincide. Very often, it's right before midterm exams. You can see that things get very busy for this student, the week of the 5th and then the week of the 27th. Knowing this, our student is able to prioritize and work her outside life around her academic schedule. Furthermore, if this student has extracurricular commitments such as sports, this ability to peer into the future will help her manage those commitments by giving her control and foresight. An agenda is a key time management tool in university. Nobody has a flawless memory. If you did, you'd have 100% on all your exams. Since we do not have flawless memories or the ability to see into the future on a moment's notice, we cannot trust our brains to remember everything we have coming up. An additional step to reverse engineering on a calendar is to go through your agenda, enter in all of your due dates, and then reverse engineer your daily schedule in your calendar. You can see above how this student has reverse engineered their schedule in a day timer. They have entered all of their due dates, but they've also counted back in time however many days they felt would be best to study. For example, The student felt comfortable with 2 weeks of work on her paper. She wrote down her paper due date, and then went back 14 days in her agenda. On each day, she wrote down how many days she had left to work on her paper. A great technique is to count how many lectures you have leading up to the midterm and then break your study session down. Make it a goal to complete between 1 and 3 lectures each day. Here you can see that the student has planned a week's worth of studying. He starts off with information gathering and organization. He reviews the syllabus, checks Blackboard for readings and materials, organizes his lecture notes, and marks out the sections of the textbook that are assigned. He also creates a learning objectives outline. Then he starts his study sessions. Each day he covers 3 lectures, and at the end, tries some practice questions and makes some compression notes. The night before the exam, he does an overview of his material. He will study his compression notes as well as any concepts that he found more difficult or more challenging. Self-testing is also really important at this stage. You are sitting around with your friends, and one of them says, "Yeah, I studied for like 2 hours straight last night, no breaks." Good for that student, but in actual fact, this is not a productive way to study. The good news is shorter, more frequent study sessions are better for your brain. A famous technique is the Pomodoro technique. This involves breaking your day up into Pomodoros, which are 25 minutes long, with a 5-minute break between. Once you have completed 4 Pomodoros, you can take a longer break. Thanks to technology, there's many free apps that will do the timing for you. There are also website and browser extensions, such as the Chromodoro extension for Chrome. Just set the timer and get going, and 25 minutes will pass by very quickly. You will need to make sure that your information sources are gathered. Effective studying begins with looking at the core syllabus. You need to identify the information resources and organization of your course. Most often, the information sources are lecture notes, textbooks, supplemental handouts, and readings. At the beginning of the semester, check Blackboard and print off anything that you're going to need. When you sit down to study your first lecture, you want to write down a few brief notes that will create a study outline or a backbone for you. First off, take a look at your syllabus. What does the syllabus say about this lecture? What topic does it fit into? Did you have supplemental readings for this lecture or textbook chapters? If you did, take a post-it note and mark those chapters off so that you can refer to them once you've reviewed your lecture notes. During the next few slides, we are going to use the sample set of lecture notes. Pause the video to take a moment and read through these briefly so that you are familiar with these notes. There is no need to memorize them or take notes at this time. When you sit down to study your notes, there are several steps to take. The first technique of effective studying is to identify the key concepts. Circle, underline, or put a box around the major concepts in your lecture notes. During the lecture, you should get used to the habit of noting important concepts when you hear the professor change topics or stress an important concept. We've done that here with the stars. Here we've noted the major concepts in blue. You want to aim for about 5 to 6 concepts in each lecture, however this may vary. Keep in mind the learning objectives outline that you created when you first sat down to study, using your syllabus, textbook, and supplemental readings. Where do these concepts fit into your outline? Next, you will want to add in keywords in the margin. These act as prompts next time you scan your notes, and they help you to find facts quickly if you need to go back and review. Now you will want to add in some questions. Treat the reading as if it is an answer to a question. Now think about what the question would be. We have written some sample questions in red. Using these techniques helps you to read text actively. Adding some movement, active thinking, and different colored pens further increases your engagement with the words laid out in front of you. Keeping in mind what you studied in your notes, as well as your learning objectives outline, you should now scan through your textbook. The rich case studies and examples, as well as extra detail that you can find in textbooks, will help solidify your understanding of the concepts. If you feel that your understanding of a concept is still a bit fuzzy, boost your notes with some extra information and some examples from your reading material, such as the note in green that we have added in here. The next technique is creating mind maps, also known as visual maps. What you see in this slide is a very simple mind map, created from the concepts that we read about in the previous slide. The topic of the paragraph was muscle growth, where synthesis exceeds breakdown. Two of the main factors in this process were resistance, exercise, and amino acids. This process in turn was regulated by hormones. At the university level, you need to have a deep understanding of concepts, deep enough that you can use that information to answer questions that do not seem straightforward. A high school level question would be, what two hormones regulate muscle growth? A university level question would be, if a patient suffers from severe testosterone imbalances, how would this affect amino acids' role in muscle growth? There, you can see the difference between the two. To be able to apply material to questions like university level exams, there is an extra step you need to take in your creation of a mind map. As we mentioned in the previous slide, university-level exams test your understanding of concepts by making you think about relationships or connections between the concepts and applying them to situations. The next stage involves drawing connection lines between these concepts and thinking about their relationship. How does one affect the other? For example, you learnt about resistance exercise, and then you learnt about amino acids. Students will tend to focus on studying each one individually and the characteristics of each. However, both are equally important to muscle growth. What about the interaction between the two, the connections that they have? Resistance exercise needs to be combined with amino acids through food intake within a 24 to 48 hour window for optimal muscle synthesis. We've drawn a red connection line and added notes about the relationship between these two concepts. Understanding the relationship and connections between concepts that you study improves your mastery of a concept. Here's a great example of the power of visual imagery, using the lecture notes that we just talked about. Look at the left side of the slide and then the right side of the slide. If you are sitting in an exam, which is most likely to pop into your head? Once you are comfortable with studying concepts using mapping and imagery techniques, you can employ the technique of notes compression. Aim to create one set of compression notes per lecture. This technique involves summarizing the major points of your lecture all on one double-sided sheet of paper. As you review your notes, don't forget to check your learning outline and try to use it as the starting point of organization. As you start to create your compression notes with mind maps, remember to add those red connection lines that explain the relationship between different concepts. Add extra facts or important points from the text if you need to. And if you find separate concepts that are seemingly related, add a connection line between those. Try not to clutter your page too much. It should be clean and relatively simple to read. If the page does look cluttered, take a new sheet of paper and make it your goal to reduce how much you wrote down. This takes a couple of tries. Refer back to your syllabus and lecture and think hard about the goal of that lecture. A notes compression page gives you a great bird's eye view of the material. Memorization is an important skill in university, but that alone is not sufficient for academic success. True mastery and understanding of a concept is what professors are looking for. They want you to synthesize and use information. Though it seems like extra work, textbook and supplemental readings enrich the material we are studying. In the process, we become more interested and create more connections between abstract concepts and reality. After all, synthesizing and applying information is all about taking it out of a book or a set of notes and applying it to the real world. In a geology class, for example, you may learn about the composition of rocks, maybe delve into a little bit of chemistry. Years down the road, you're not going to remember the exact details of that equation, but you will remember the case studies and examples in your lecture. Material needs meaning. If you can dig deeper into material and see what other situations or scenarios that concept applies to, you will improve your memory and recall. You will also create deeper meaning. This is why textbook reading is valuable. Textbooks provide deeper meaning, more details, real-life examples and applications. Make sure you've prepared a learning objectives outline and a set of compression notes before you do a textbook reading. This way you will shorten your reading time and get far more out of your textbook. You will know which concepts to look out for, and you will know which ones need further work. Successful students know that the material they study needs meaning. If I asked you to memorize a phone number, you probably wouldn't remember it down the road, because it had no meaning. If that number happened to be really similar to a friend's phone number, or it had the same digits as your birthday, it would be much easier to remember. Why? Because it has meaning to you. Here's another example. Because the Japanese word for "you're welcome" is totally foreign to our vocabulary, it does not yet have meaning. However, the mnemonic technique of giving something meaning, no matter how absurd it seems, helps us to remember and recall information. The phrase "don't touch my mustache" is a sneaky way of remembering the Japanese phrase for "you're welcome." Have you ever had a class that's heavy on memorization? You know, the dates, the numbers, the formulas, the lists. Yep, we've all been there. We've all spent hours trying to memorize those lists. For memorization-heavy classes, you want to continue using the mnemonic technique. Mnemonics take words on a page and give them more meaning, and also associate them with previous memories in your brain. This helps you to recall them later. The trick with mnemonics is that they create a visual image or story in your mind, giving them meaning. Remember when we talked about the importance of visual imagery? The example we have here is from biology. You could repeat this list over and over, and you should, because you need to become familiar with the words. But to prevent difficulties during the exam situation, you need a foolproof key to unlocking this information. Here is a mnemonic technique for this list. King Philip came over for good spaghetti is a great phrase. Often with mnemonics, the more absurd the phrase, the easier you will recall it. If you are dealing with a well-known list, it really is worth Googling using the keyword mnemonics and a few of the words from your list. There are many databases for more common topics. For example, a well-known database is the Medical Mnemonic Database. This has helped many students get through medical school or biological science classes. The other option is that you can get creative and come up with your own. We tend to think of practice tests as a predictor of the future. If you do poorly on a practice test, it shakes your confidence for the next day. If you do well, it builds your confidence. We want you to get away from thinking this way. Practice tests are a warm-up. They get your brain working properly. They are not about predicting the future or how you're going to do on your exam. They are very similar to the warm-up an athlete would do before a big race. Warm-ups involve putting a body through the motions of a race in order to warm up the joints, muscles, brain and nervous system. Does an athlete care about how fast they run in a warm-up? Are they standing there checking their watch? Do they think that their warm-up time is going to be their race time? Of course not. Similarly, you should not focus on your grades in a practice test. It's not about that. Why is it so difficult to make yourself self-test at the end of a study session? You've conditioned yourself to think of the self-testing as a bonus stage, the extra mile. It shouldn't be like that at university. Self-testing is the final mile. Studying is not complete until you've self-tested. All that effort studying information and putting it into your brain is useless if you're not good at pulling that information back out again. Think about the last time you studied. How many hours did you spend putting material into your brain with studying? And how many hours did you spend pulling material out of your brain with self-testing? Was there a big gap? You study the answers, but not the questions. However, when you walk into an exam, what are you spending 2 hours with? The questions. Let me explain things a bit more. Memory is not a thing, yet people say, "I have a terrible memory," or "I wasn't born with a good memory." Memory is not a structure, it's a process. So if you think you have a terrible memory, think of it as you having a terrible process. Self-testing is designed to improve the process. As we discussed earlier, when you review your notes, you can pretend each paragraph is an answer and then write the question below in a different colored pen. Another one is to use practice exams. Many professors will use similar questions over the years. The Students' Union has an online exam bank, and most undergraduate clubs can hook you up with a membership. It's easy to store information in the brain, but it's much harder to pull it out. We are weaker at doing this because we really focus on putting information into the brain. Another way to become an expert self-tester is to harness technology. There are many websites and apps that will create electronic flashcards for you or assist you in self-testing. Dig around and find a favorite that helps you with the question and answer process. Remember to study the questions as well as the answers. Get great at pulling information out of your mind, not just putting it in there, and think about improving the memory process. You'd be shocked at how much information is out there, especially on the internet. Because there's so much information out there, you need to become an expert at sourcing information. There are many reputable academic websites that provide great explanations and applications of concepts that you learn about in your courses. A number of professors have also published YouTube videos where they explain things in further detail. A great tip is to try searching the YouTube Education channel. Make sure your settings are set to University and or EDU when you search your topic. Always keep in mind that you need to make sure that the source is academic and reputable. The subject specialist librarians at the University of Calgary are a great resource. They can point you towards some very effective resources online, and you can chat with them online on the library website. Textbook publishers are also in the business of providing supplemental material online. It seems like an extra unnecessary step, but to really boost your exam marks, you have to be willing to go the extra mile in your studying. Are you willing to go the extra mile? Fatigue is a common pitfall during studying. We have a few tips that might help you through. First off, drink water. Although caffeine can help boost you and give you some mental clarity, it's easy to get dehydrated, especially in Calgary. Buy a big 1.5-litre bottle of water and have it at your desk with you while you study. Aim to finish the bottle before you're done studying. Very often, the body can't tell the difference between hunger and thirst, and drinking water may help to regulate your appetite. This will also help you to feel like your study time is productive, and you will feel less inclined to snack. Second, keep fresh with new environments. Study for each course in a different environment. Associate that environment with that course. You can also switch study locations after a break. This helps to reduce interference in the brain, especially if you're taking similar classes to each other. For example, you could study history in the library, biology in the coffee shop, and go from 6 to 7 in the library and 7 to 8 in the cafe. Breaking the old high school evening study habits is another big one. Really take advantage of the breaks between your classes. Researchers have proven that morning studying results in 20% more retention than studying at night. Also, make sure you time yourself. If you're having a hard time sitting down and getting things started, set 10 minutes on your iPhone or BlackBerry and just start studying. That's it. When that alarm goes off, you'll already be in the study zone and it won't be as hard to continue. You can also find that you get really distracted and your concentration starts to slip. Start to do something completely different when you feel this happening. A person who goes to sleep or does something completely different, such as a workout or creative activity, after learning, will remember more than someone who stays awake or continues studying other subjects. This also helps to reduce what we call the interference effect, and it also gives your brain a break. There are many highs and lows of a big study session. One of the highs is the rush you get from eating carbohydrates and drinking caffeine. This explains why Bake Chef, for example, is one of the most popular places on campus during finals. Carbohydrates and sugary foods, as well as caffeine, provide you with a rush of energy. However, the effect is not long-lasting. Soon you are crashing again and craving even more. Not only does this wreak havoc with your hormones, energy levels, and body composition, it also affects mental clarity. Think about adding some protein or fat into your snacks. This will balance out your blood sugar and prolong the energy boost that you get from food intake. Protein and fats help regulate hormone releases and prevent the highs and lows of heavy carbohydrate loads, such as the ones you'd find in candy or baked goods. Have you ever noticed when another student walks in with delicious food? Food does have an effect on the sense of smell and taste, and this can refresh us. Students have suggested using flavored gum or even carrying around a nice scented hand lotion so that once in a while you can boost your energy levels through your sense of smell. Going for a walk in fresh air or getting in some exercise is also a huge help. Many of us have had the experience of being told to study in a quiet library or to study in the same place all of the time. But the truth is, there are many different learning styles and preferences. Some people can study great in a coffee shop, while others need a silent room. Researchers believe that our brains make subtle associations between what we are studying and what is in the background while we are studying. Trust us, at the end of university you'll have clear memories of where you studied for final exams, even if the material is long faded away. The point of this is that you need to experiment with study locations and identify at least 3 or 4 spots where you concentrate well and are able to focus. Researchers have found that when you lose your concentration and motivation, one of the most effective things you can do is get up and physically change study locations. Our study techniques have been refined over 10 years of doing homework and studying. If you're in your second year of university, you've got 12 years of practice behind you. With 12 years of practice, you can have some tough habits to break. For example, many people arrive in university and find themselves studying on evenings and weekends. Why? They're used to doing this in high school. However, in university you can schedule your classes so that you have gaps between classes, or you can schedule times during the day to study. If you truly want to change things up and see different results, say yes to things you'd previously say no to, and say no to things you'd previously say yes to. Also ask yourself, how do I normally study, and how has normal worked out for you so far? Reviewing what we covered in this seminar, we looked at time management, information organization, mastering the content, tips and tricks that will assist you with studying, and common pitfalls. Thank you for watching the Study Smarter seminar. You may now proceed to Blackboard to complete your activity. If you are completing the Skills for Success certificate through the Student Success Centre, congratulations, you're well on your way.